Back in 2007, the mobile phone market had a strict definition of productivity. You needed a small, confined screen, and above all, you needed a physical plastic keyboard. Steve Jobs ignored all of that. He introduced a device with no physical keys, a massive screen for the era, and a staggering $500 price tag. It was a complete dictation of Apple's rigid vision. Fast forward to today, and that single, unyielding vision has shattered into a sprawling matrix of options. We have standard models, plus models, Pros, and Pro Maxes scattered across multiple price tiers. The history of the iPhone reveals a 15-year negotiation between Apple's stubborn design choices and the reality of what people actually want to buy. To understand how we got here, we have to look past the processors and the glass. We have to examine the psychological tug-of-war between Apple and the people who actually buy their phones. For years, Apple insisted a 3.5 or 4-inch screen was the maximum ideal size for a human hand. Android competitors were rapidly moving to 4.5 and 5-inch displays, but Apple held firm to their tiny dimensions. The friction from the market eventually became too loud to ignore. In 2014, Apple finally caved. They delivered the significantly larger 4.7-inch iPhone 6, alongside an enormous 5.5-inch 6 Plus. This chart maps historical iPhone sales volumes over the years. Look at the massive spike right here. By giving people exactly the large displays they were asking for, Apple moved a staggering 276 million units across those two models. When an engineering-driven company sets its ego aside and simply follows the market's instruction, they shatter industry records. But yielding to the market is the exception for Apple. They frequently dictate how users should behave, even when the transition physically hurts. Customers endured dropped calls from the iPhone 4's flawed antenna design. They dealt with the immense frustration of Apple trashing the universal 30-pin connector for a proprietary Lightning port on the iPhone 5. Then came the ultimate test of user loyalty. With the iPhone 7, Apple deleted the headphone jack entirely. They cited courage, while consumers universally condemned the loss of a decades-old audio standard. Yet the outrage didn't stop the sales. The market capitulated, grudgingly purchased dongles, and eventually transitioned to wireless earbuds. Apple survives these brutal transitions because they know exactly how much market leverage they hold. They understand the precise moment they can force an unpopular behavioral shift without driving their audience away. In 2017, Apple tested that leverage again. The iPhone X pushed the base price to a staggering $1,000 and introduced a highly controversial display notch. The internet reacted with venom. Prominent tech reviewers and vocal power users publicly boycotted the device, declaring it overpriced and ugly. Look at this graph comparing internet sentiment against actual revenue for the iPhone X. While the online complaining trends straight into the floor, the revenue line rockets upward. The general public eagerly bought over 60 million units. But Apple isn't immune to miscalculations. They assumed the vocal internet demand for smaller devices was genuine and launched the iPhone 12 mini. It failed miserably, forcing Apple to halt production. The real money was sitting in the middle. Compromised devices like the XR and the 11 balanced premium features with lower price points, quietly becoming the most popular smartphones on the planet. The loudest online critics rarely match how people actually spend their paychecks. Apple is forced to constantly poke and prod the silent majority to see exactly what they will tolerate. The result of those 15 years of tests, concessions, and missteps is today's sprawling ecosystem. This grid represents their strategy. By mapping standard, Plus, Pro, and Pro Max models, Apple captures every demographic. Within this upper bracket, features like the dynamic island preserve their visionary ego, dictating the software experience for power users. Corporate survival at this scale requires a delicate balance. A company must know precisely when to force a bitter pill, like stripping the charging brick from the box, and when to back down and give customers exactly what they want, like thicker phones with longer battery life. Ultimately, the iPhone acts as a physical record of the tension between Apple's design ego and the economic tolerances of its audience.